It might be the summer breeze, it might be the summer trees, but I'm feeling better now. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
This week, in the second of our two special episodes of Real Health with Dr. Nandi, we're going to be talking gut health, nutrition, and how to live a life of purpose. We'll be joined by Dr. Sinead Lamini, Nikki Robertson, and Nicole Allen, and we'll also be taking some questions from our audience.
I'm feeling better.
So, Dr. Nandi, a few years ago, I discovered the importance of gut health. It was, I often refer to it as, I sort of followed this wild, it seemed like a wild goose chase at that point in time. But it was such a profound discovery because it made sense of my entire life, actually, from birth. From a baby, I struggled with oral thrush, with eczema, with mood swings, which got worse as I got older as well. And when I was finally able to link it all to the state of my gut, it's amazing how I often refer to it as a monkey being lifted, a weight being lifted off my back, because finally I knew where the cause or the source of the problem was. Before we get into all the questions that will come around gut health, why did you choose to specialize in gastroenterology?
Because I'm smart.
Because you're dealing with the seat of
Because I like the smartest
emotions.
organ.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I love the field where you could do medicine as well as surgery. So way back when I was a student, because I love the fact that I think it was in the U.S. the first 7 complaints are gastrointestinal.
Yeah.
So if you look at that, so I love the fact that we could help a lot of people. But I like to do things. I wanted to be able to fix somebody who was bleeding from their intestines from a bleeding ulcer. I mean, it's such a privilege that when you're seeing this on endoscopy, you're seeing the artery pouring out and be able to stop it. And literally, you can save a life. So I love that part of it. That you could have a procedure that helps. At the same time, I could be a hepatologist and talk to someone about how to help with their liver disease. So I like the nice combination of it. But as I learned more about the field, I realized how intricate. I knew about the symptoms, but how intricate the gut was to the rest of the body. I mean, but the reality is that. We're all connected. All the organs are connected. The kidney, if your kidneys are not doing well, your entire body doesn't do well. If your heart's not doing well, it's not just, oh, my heart's doing poorly, the rest of my body's okay. It's the fact that we're all connected. The gut's especially important because it's such an organ that gets insulted at such a young age. Like you talked about, if you eat crap when you're young, then what happens is that you get crap all over your body, and it's unexplainable. People say, "Oh, I don't get it," and the people that are feeding you often have limited knowledge of what they're doing, so they just keep doing what's been told to them. And for some people, they get away with it, but for you, they couldn't. And so what I love about that is that you can make changes. It's not just about knowing it and then sit back saying, oh, I hope I do okay. You can make changes in your diet that can actually lead to changes relatively rapidly. I mean, including probiotics, including what you put in your body, right? And one of the authors that I really like is Dr. Hyman. And he's written a book, I don't know if you've heard of him in South Africa, but in the U.S. we have. He says the most important tool in fixing your health is your fork, right? If you take your fork and put in the wrong thing, big problems. Put in the right things, it's a great help. So gut health and gut immune system and the gut nervous system. I treat diseases like irritable bowel syndrome, and so what happens is far too often doctors say, you've got IBS, you must be crazy. Doctors say this because they cannot pinpoint the reason. What they don't understand is that the gut's nervous system is so intricate that when you see people that have irritable bowel syndrome and do PET scans and functional scans in their brain, they light up like a Christmas tree compared to people who don't. That means that there's signals being sent from your gut objectively. This is not just people talking and postulating. It's evidence. And I love that, because then you can say, this is what's happening. This is why your gut is so important. So I think there's tremendous research now talk about the gut immune system, the gut nervous system, and how it actually incorporates with the rest of your body. Yeah. That's amazing.
Nikki, when you see people, is this where you start?
Absolutely. You know, if people come to us looking for weight loss or migraines or just wanting to get in shape, or if they're depressed, the first place you start is with the gut. And typically a person will come in and we do a thorough assessment, and you ask the question, how's your digestion? And they go, oh, I get bloated. They didn't think that, no one puts that back to, this is where it all started. Just about everybody's got some kind of gut issue. Yeah. And that is where we start 100% of the time, and we get 100% results. Yeah. The problem is now, it's become quite mainstream, and people realize they should take a probiotic, and they go off to a chain store and they get a probiotic, and it doesn't work because it's not specific to them. So there are protocols and there are ways to get down to the nitty-gritty, but you've got to know what you're dealing with as well, because the gut is so complex. Yeah. It's not just a case of, it's not just a case of taking too many probiotics. There's so much that goes on with gut health. And I think our gut is a reflection of the environment. It's almost like a hologram. It's like a fingerprint of what's going on out there is reflecting in here. And we throw the word around gut instinct. And anybody who's had anxiety is going to have a gut issue, because the neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And we don't realize the length and breadth of how far, I mean, we're just scraping the surface. Yeah. And just, if you can do anything, is look after what's going on. What are you putting down your throat that is becoming you, that is translating into information in that gut? You will eradicate most, not all, most disease. So if you're looking at autoimmune, you start with the gut. If you're looking at hormone problems, you start with the gut. Insulin, it comes down to what's going on with the bacteria in your system. There's possibly more bacteria in your gut than we have cells in our body. Yeah. So it's complex, but it is fundamentally the place to start. Yeah.
So now I think what we were seeing before is that we were previously told you've got to learn to manage something, you've got to learn to just deal with it. And now finally, our understanding of gut health, we can actually see that certain things can be cured. It's not just a case of managing it anymore. And especially when it comes to autoimmune conditions, is that the type of mindset that you have with your patients, especially as, being a general practitioner?
Yes, being a general practitioner, and I'm just going to touch on what Dr. Nandi said, especially with IBS, is that people will come to you and they'll be suffering from this condition. And they've been told before that they're going to be fine. Oh, you're going to be fine. Just take this, you'll be all right. Just take that, you'll be all right. Take this and eat that, eat this. But they never really actually taught that the problem starts from the gut. Yeah. That if you don't fix your gut, if you don't repair it, if you don't remove what is the insult, if you don't replace what needs to be replaced, then the problem will just keep, it will keep continuing. And then you get conditions like leaky gut, which actually can lead to autoimmune disorders, because when you have a leaky gut, it basically means that the lining of your digestive tract has been compromised. And then what that happens is it will not absorb food properly as it should, but also because it is leaky between the spaces of the cells, you might get some intruders coming in there that shouldn't be, and then they land up in your blood system, which then can trigger, as you were saying, it can trigger a lot of problems within the rest of the body, especially within the immune system. So with a lot of diseases, not just your autoimmune or diseases of immunity, but also, as we touched on, the diseases of the nervous system. Everything really does stem back to the gut. If your gut is healthy, then the rest of you will be healthy. Your body will be healthy.
Yeah. When it comes to leaky gut, a lot of people have asked, where do you even start? Because there's the GAPS protocol, which is extremely difficult to follow because you're warming up your food on the stove. You can't warm it up in a microwave, for example. There's the SCD protocol. How are you taking patients through that healing system specifically for leaky gut? I'm going to give it to you, Dr. Nandi.
So here's the thing, I'll tell you, it's not mainstream that everybody believes that leaky gut syndrome is the problem. Remember, so the idea is that the difference between what's in your poop, is that what we call it here in South Africa, poop?
Yeah,
poop versus blood is 1 cell thick. Yeah. Right? So the idea is that if you've got these tight junctions that are supposed to be, basically you've got every law enforcement agency at those junctions to stop people from coming through. If there's even a slight space there, then you could have a problem. Well, it's difficult to prove that there is a space there that's causing the inflammation. There's putative mechanisms, meaning that there's preliminary research shows that, but people will disagree left and right. So what I tell them is this: I think that it goes back to not having these really difficult systems to follow, but rather, we talked about probiotics, but I like natural probiotics too. I like them to eat yogurt. I like them to eat sauerkraut. I like kimchi. And be able to get the foods that we normally have in our system. I think when you do that, then what happens is, as a result, then these problems that you have with your immune system correct themselves. I don't believe in getting these systems where people cannot even follow it or have difficulties following it to repair it. I think if you go back to doing a couple of things, number one is changing your diet. Changing your diet to have foods that are whole, foods that are not processed, foods that have probiotics in them, along with doing something else that's revolutionary, getting rest. Getting rest that repairs your body, getting sleep, right? And stopping, and that will help you. That will help you to repair it. The other thing I want to say is that I do believe the gut's important. I don't want people to come away with the feeling that this will solve everything.
Yeah.
Because people come and tell me that, listen, I have this problem, and I heard that my gut health, if I change that, it will change everything. I think that's part of the solution. Absolutely, everything you've said is true. But it has to be coupled with other things. You have to also exercise. You also have to be able to say, this is what I do with a purpose-driven life. It can't happen in isolation. And you can't just take care of your gut and not take care of your heart. You can't take care of your gut and also not take care of your brain. I mean, you have to do it all. So the gut is just as important as your kidneys are.
Don't you believe it starts there, though?
It does, but it doesn't end there.
Okay.
So it is the inciting process, but most of us are not two anymore. So lots has happened. So it's almost like saying, well, the initial event in the intruder coming is breaking down the door. Well, if you fix the door, you can't fix the damage that's done in your house already. So you have to fix the door clearly, but you also have to take care of the damage that's been there in all the other organs. And that is an integrative approach with not just saying that I'm going to go to a gut specialist and solve everything. It will definitely help, but you got to follow through with everything else. Otherwise, you will have a solution that's transient and will not follow. It's like the diets we talked about.
Yeah.
Diets will give you the solution for a while, but it won't solve everything. So I agree with both of what's been said, but I also think that we have to do more. And we can't just count on one thing. There'll be people who talk about, if you do this cleansing system for your liver, you'll be fine. There are people who purport that. And they have evidence to show that. I tell them, listen, do that, but also do others. I want to make sure that's important, Lisa, as well.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we have to understand that food allergies may play a huge role in this. So I would say that if people feel like there are foods that they can't eat, see an allergist, get tested, so we know what foods. Don't just say, well, my aunt, something said this food is bad for you. Find out there are certain foods that people can't tolerate. That's also an important part of this, because there are certain foods that we've eaten for generations that we can't tolerate. The most common one that people understand is gluten, for example.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who's gluten intolerant, not having celiac disease, there's a difference.
Yeah.
But even having gluten
Just
intolerance.
highlight the difference for us. For
Yeah,
those
so
of us that don't
celiac
know.
disease is a disease where the substance called gluten, which is normally taken by people, in some people, the body thinks it's actually a foreign substance, like a bacteria, so it attacks it. Well, there's nothing to attack, so it damages your body, damages the intestine, to the point where it damages the lining where it can no longer absorb food. It can be that extreme. Then when food goes into your colon, your large intestine, the nice bacteria eat it up, produce bloating, diarrhea. It can cause a multitude of problems. That's the disease. However, people can be gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive. And that means that you may not have the disease. When I, as a gastroenterologist, go in and take biopsies, it may be negative, but you may actually be sensitive, have reactions to that gluten, and then be intolerant. That also is important. But I think the key, what I'm trying to say is that see an allergist if you can, get tested so you make sure that the damage that she's talking about is being done. So you know what foods, we know in general to avoid processed foods, but there are specific foods to avoid. That's also important to know.
It is amazing, without even having to go to get tested for allergies, it is amazing how people ignore their own bodies.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they ignore, we're talking about bloating, I think recently, and you were saying, people will come to you and they say, well, and after I eat bread, or every time I have a sandwich with cheese on it, or every time I have this and that, I feel bad or I get diarrhea, and they'll continue.
Stop eating cheese.
To eat
man.
cheese sandwiches. They'll continue to eat cheese
Stop
sandwiches.
eating cheese.
They start owning. They start owning the symptoms though. When people say, you know, when I have that, this happens to me, and and they'll just be indulging in it.
Every time I hit my hand on the hammer, it hurts.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
Well, this is the thing, though. Is I was going to ask Nikki if we've sort of normalized
Owning
the
symptoms.
abnormal.
Yeah.
And you'll eat cheese because you can't think of an alternative.
You love cheese.
Yeah, you just love cheese.
And
It's addictive,
you get
actually.
addicted to it. And we do get addicted to the things that don't serve us.
Yeah.
Because allergens do that. But it's also a case of, the one reason why people don't make nutritional changes is because, firstly, they don't plan and prepare. So they don't know how to do that. So it's a bit of an education. How to actually work out what you're going to eat in the day and pack those little containers and what you're going to put in them. So there's an education component there. And then, what should I be eating? That's another education component. So what's the alternative? And if you haven't explored the alternatives or sat down with somebody who said, well, try this, it won't occur to you. So you don't eat, you don't plan, you're starving, hungry, there's some cheese, okay, I'll just eat it today. And it's going to cause, but it's fine, because then I'll just take this pill and that'll get rid of the symptoms, and I'll continue until something really goes wrong. And then you start looking.
Yeah.
But also as human beings, I think we go to a doctor, or go to a nutritionist and go, I want to lose weight. And don't look at the whole picture of your stress levels, the fact that you're not training, the fact that you're not sleeping. Not sleeping is the most fattening thing you can do, because you're going to be playing catch up the whole day trying to just stay awake. So that whole body, that whole life system is the most important thing you can do.
So don't go away, because when we come back, the discussion continues with our panel and Dr. Nandi.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
Thanks again for joining us on Real Health. It's a special edition of Real Health. We have Dr. Nandi with us in studio. Dr. Nandi.
What do you think is the underlying cause of disease? Is it a lack of oxygen on a cellular level? Is it chronic inflammation? Because it seems like we're in search of that holy grail of medicine, right? We're looking for the one thing that we can say, okay, fine, this is where I know disease emanates from. And I know it's a very simplistic question to ask.
No, it's a very complex question.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an extremely complex question.
It sounds like we're looking at one answer. That's the reason why I say it seems like it's simplistic, but I know it is quite complex. But what are your thoughts around that?
I think genetically you're predisposed. So first thing is that you're born with certain tendencies, right? So I was born with a tendency for high blood pressure. So I have it. So you are born with certain tendencies. And then the environment that you have, the food that you eat, the air that you breathe, the chemicals that you ingest voluntarily, all those things play a role. Voluntarily, right? So it's not, nobody's forcing you. So you eat those things and you get those insults. So it's almost like you're set up, right? You're set up. It's like a 1-2 punch in boxing. So you're set up, the boxer sets you up with the body. That's your genetics. And then bam, comes to the face, and another one goes to your left hook, and you come down. So the key is that you're not going to be able to change your genetics yet. We're starting to get there, but you can change your genetics. So find out as much as you can about your family's history and your natural history. Secondly, then do everything you can to reduce that risk. On a microscopic level, inflammation is the key. Inflammation is the key. And what you said was absolutely right, but it's a combination of both. When you lack oxygen, you cause inflammation. But that's not the only cause of inflammation. There are multitudes of causes. Even having that fight or flight will be able to increase the amount of cortisol, increase the stress hormones that also cause inflammation. So to me, it's a combination of your genetic predisposition, right? No matter what you do, your cholesterol is 500 in some people. So they're going to have more risk of heart disease. For them, they have to do everything to reduce their risk of heart disease. So others will have risk of liver disease or gut disease, history of Crohn's disease, history of celiac disease. So to me, it's a combination of that. But we can control our environment and we're not doing it. She's absolutely right. You know what? We know we can't eat that cheese, and she's absolutely right. But we won't go to the step of going to our fridge and walking there and making the conscious decision of opening it and actually looking behind the milk count, the milk carton to see what's behind there so we can find something to eat. It's just pure. We've been trained to be lazy. We've been trained to have creature comforts and make everything convenient. It's the fast food of life. It's the drive-through. Do you guys have drive-throughs, right? Yeah. So the drive-through of life. I mean, you go through, you don't have to get out of your car. Pretty soon you can go in a bathroom in your car. You don't have to get out to even do that, right? So it's becoming so portable that you can't even get out of your couch to go to the fridge because there's a piece of cheese right there.
Yeah.
And I'll be okay. You're right, because I have an anti-bloating medicine in my left hand.
Yeah.
So why walk? That's the problem.
Exactly.
Do we have any questions here, guys? Thank you. Oh, yes.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, what is the role of antioxidants play in relation to having a healthy gut? If you could maybe elaborate on that.
Thanks for that. Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it's reparative, right? Reparative mechanisms. If you can have antioxidants. The most revolutionary antioxidant that I know of is a vegetable. So people think, I need to take a pill made by, Bula Bula Pharmaceutical, and I put it in my mouth and it will solve everything. But one of the best antioxidants are foods. For example, one of my favorite foods are blueberries, packed with antioxidants. Tastes delicious. I put in this thing called a smoothie.
Pomegranates.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's like I use this revolutionary probiotic called yogurt, and this revolutionary antioxidant called blueberries, and then eat it with a revolutionary spinach and a revolutionary antioxidant called kale. So my goal is that those antioxidants can be part of your diet in the supermarket. I would rather you do that than go find a pill made by somebody, because I'm not saying you shouldn't if it doesn't work, but the first step should be, what can we incorporate in your diet? Maybe you hate blueberries, but there'll be something you like in the fruit family and the vegetable family. And so, with my sons, every night I make a smoothie. So I train them at a young age to love this stuff and know it, not to be foreign, but to be something that's part of their life. That's what I would say about antioxidants. And I think it's critical in healing not just the gut, but the entire body. Absolutely. Studies show Alzheimer's disease, you can reduce it by doing something revolutionary, by eating vegetables. Like, Popeye, right? To eat the spinach and gets powerful. Well, you can do that as human beings as well. So not just that, but autoimmune disease, diseases of kidneys and liver, everything. Because at the end of the day, your body can only heal so much without some help. You got to do something she talked about, and I talked about, you talked about, is sleeping. Another revolutionary idea is you got to sleep, you got to close your eyes and actually not do something for a while. And so if you sleep, take some vegetables in every meal and fruit in every meal.
Organic vegetables as far as possible?
Yeah, if you can afford it. Listen, here's the thing I tell people is that if you can afford organic vegetables all day long, please do it. But if you can't, I'd rather have you eat vegetables than not eat vegetables at all. My rule is the thicker the skin, the less the importance of organic. So, we have watermelons that have thick skin, not as worried about it. Blueberries, more worried about it. Grapes, more worried about it. Apples, more worried about it. Thin skin, pesticides get right on it. You're right where the action is. When you have a nice big coat, like with an orange, less worried about it. Ideal world, if we could all have organic foods all the time, absolutely. But certain people can't afford it. It's just the reality. Where I live, an organic milk is literally 3 times the price of regular milk. And I do it because I can, but people cannot. So that's my long answer to your short question.
Okay, we had one more question.
I'm gluten intolerant, and before I knew that, I went to the doctors and I couldn't receive help until I got help from a homeopath, and they told me to stop, all the foods that contain gluten. I once had ulcers and I went for the biopsy and I was treated, and I tried eating accordingly, but I know that there are things that trigger.
Yes.
So I need assistance in that.
So there are 2 separate problems. So the stomach ulcers are not caused by the gluten. Stomach ulcers are caused by mainly 2 things: is acid or a bacteria called H. pylori. It's a bacteria that can infect your gut and result in an infection and then cause an ulcer. The other thing is medicines. There are certain medicines. I don't know if you have ibuprofen, if it's called Bufen, there's lots of names around the world,
Yes.
but that will also cause ulcers. Also, aspirin will cause ulcers.
Yes, it's
So,
very common.
so two problems. You have two problems. One is the ulcer. The ulcer, when you do the biopsies, they look for a bacteria called Helicobacter or H. pylori. Once you treat that, in most cases, the ulcer doesn't come back. In countries like South Africa, you can have up to 90% of ulcers can be caused by that. So your doctor should look for that. Secondly, is that you have to make sure that you don't take those medicines. For the gluten, if you avoid the gluten and you don't have the disease, really your body will repair itself, because no longer, it's almost like you're having the military attack your body every single day. Once you take away the military, which is the gluten, no more attacks, your body repairs itself. Obviously, have fruits and vegetables as much as you can. If you can have yogurt, if you can have sauerkraut, your normal probiotics. I don't know how much kimchi is available in this country, but kimchi is another one. It's really a good
You can,
source.
yeah. You can get it from certain
good.
households.
So
Learn to
you
make
can
your
do that.
own, actually.
Yeah.
But that's all you really need.
You can make your own as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Just make sure you have your windows open, because it will smell up your house for a long time.
You're
But it's
speaking
worth
from
it.
experience here,
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Nandi. So now, before we let you go, just to, I think, add to what I think you're asking, with the GAPS protocol, Dr. McBride recommends being off these foods that trigger for a period of 2 years, up to 2 years, and then start to introduce those, sort of your glutens.
back into,
But
your
she gives
diet.
a staged approach. So she recommends starting off with sourdough breads. And she says she doesn't think that most people would ever want to include gluten into their diets ever again after that.
Exactly.
But how long should you be off this? Because that's a difficult thing for people. They say, oh, I've been off it for 6 months. I don't know whether my gut has been healed or not.
See, that's the thing. We're not all the same. So some people may be off it for 6 months, and when they reintroduce, it doesn't affect them as much. Some people may be off it for 2 years. When they do reintroduce, they'll be right back where they started. So, I mean, the key thing is probably just take it in limited quantities up until your body tells you whether it can withstand having that onslaught back again. As he said, you'll have an army, and then you eradicate it, and then you kind of bring that army back. But before you bring that army back, you have to make sure that you arm yourself.
Your forces are strong enough.
Yes, your forces are strong enough.
Yeah.
So as we go back to that, the food you eat, and I always say, let food be your medicine. As he says, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, please.
A little bit of poison is still poison.
Yes.
So if you've got a sensitivity to something, there are so many alternatives nowadays where you don't have to eat gluten, but you can still enjoy your food, and you can have, so you not miss it if you know what you're doing. So I don't really think, I mean, it depends on the severity, obviously.
Yeah.
But
If you have the disease,
it does
you avoid
depend.
it completely.
Yeah.
If you have intolerance, sensitivity, you can cheat a little bit. You can cheat a little bit and have a normal life.
All right.
Don't go away, because when we come back, Nicole Allen, our holistic health coach, also joins us.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
While Nicole is joining us, I'm going to ask you another question that came through from Roger, and he said, he asked, do you believe that aging is actually a disease?
So I think the answer to that is life is a fatal disease. So unfortunately, no matter what you do, something's gonna get you. So your best goal is that I think it's a nice question to ask. What can you do to optimize your health, right? So there are certain cultures that people live way over 100 and they live well. And let's look at the features that they have. It's not very dramatic. They eat not very much. They move, and they have family and spirituality. That's the commonality. That's how simple it is. Now, we can get into the nitty-gritty and talk about, what's happening on the cellular level. But the problem is that, it's difficult to go, and we don't have nanotechnology, which means that it's technology that's so tiny that you go in your cells and you can inject it. We can't live forever yet. But what you can do is try to take away and minimize your tendencies as much as possible. So like I said, for me, controlling my high blood pressure is an important thing. My grandfather died at age 47 of a heart attack. So I know what And knowledge is really important. Ask your family what things that run in your family genetically so you know what you're predisposed. And then obviously do everything you can to prevent it. I don't think aging is a disease. I think that every organism in the planet has a certain lifespan and you can't live forever. Your best goal is to optimize that body, that engine, by giving it good stuff, making it work enough, but not overdoing it. I mean, I think the people who run these ultra marathons, the people who do the CrossFit crazy, lifting chairs and tires and throwing it across the room.
She dips her head in shame.
You know, it's until you have rhabdomyolysis. What that means in English is that your darn muscles have broken down and causing kidney failure.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. Right? It doesn't sound like a healthy thing to do. Now, if it works for you, it's great. But the idea is that, you know, I think that aging is not a disease. It's a part of life. What you try to do is optimize that so you can live the best life you can.
Yeah, I think also part of it would be changing your mindset, one's mindset, and we're going to come back to this over and over. So Nick, I'm going to bring you in here because I completely agree with Dr. Nandi, but on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that will say, well, they sort of resign themselves to the fact that this is what happens to my body because I'm aging, I'm getting older. And yet you see people that live well, beautiful, long lives. They look amazing. They look 20 years younger than their chronological age. It's a mindset change at the end of the day.
100%. There's that saying, what the mind believes, the body perceives.
Yes.
And like Dr. Nandi said earlier, the mind-body connection is so strong. And it's a huge mistake to ignore it, to assume the mind is so powerful, the subconscious mind is so powerful, and we send messages to our body every day, often without even being aware of it. But the things we tell ourselves, the things our fundamental beliefs, you know, oh, I can't do that, it's too hard, or I don't really want to walk around the block, I'm too tired, or all of this. If you say it, your body believes it. It becomes true. It becomes your reality. So a lot of, you know, you touched on countries where you have really healthy people living to over 100. A lot of what they have is a positive mindset. It's just, of course I can get up today. Of course I can do my gardening or make a meal or do some gentle exercise. You know, I think we put so much pressure on ourselves. And we've spoken about this before. People have such an all or nothing attitude. It's like you either go for it 100% or it's actually not worth doing. But small changes matter. Small steps get you to your goal. And the advantage of small changes is you can sustain small changes. When we try to, like, you know, go big or go home, the failure is so much greater when you can't get there.
It's devastating.
It's devastating, and it puts you off trying again. But if you just make small lifestyle changes each day, if you just think to yourself, if you tell yourself you can do it, I can just, you know, get off the couch for 5 minutes, and then tomorrow it'll be 6 minutes or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, and you gradually make changes, positive changes, you will see great results without setting yourself back. So, you know, so many times.
Starting somewhere at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Nandi and Nikki, I want to touch on a question that I actually thought about just now because it came through. You mentioned running. From Ayanda Tusini. Ayanda Tusini Gamede, actually. She says, are there any dangers associated with running, especially when a person does several marathons and ultra marathons during the year? A typical example would be training for Comrades, a 90-kilometer ultra marathon. Its training involves running between 60 and 150 kilometers per week for a period of about 6 months, which includes running several 42 kilometers, 50 kilometers, and 60-kilometer races, usually a week apart.
So, you know, you start to wonder what the goal is. So it goes back to your purpose-driven life. What is your purpose? Yeah. Is your purpose to be an Olympic athlete? Or is your purpose to be a healthy person? So if it works for you to do that, you have to really be careful. You have to be hydrated. Optimal nutrition. I mean, caloric intakes are much higher than what's recommended. Foods that are reparative, much higher than what we'd recommend. But I think for the average person, it's just not healthy because
it's a bucket list item, right? I don't know how many of you have Comrades Marathon on your Okay, not many. Okay.
But several.
Clearly not.
But Stacey, several in a week. I mean,
I think what she's saying is that's what it takes in order to prepare for a comrades marathon.
it is, but if you do these ultra exercises, I think. Listen, I think it can work for individuals, but I think as a generalization, I mean, for people who are being healthy, you have to look at your body and say, what do you want? Do you want a healthy body, or do you want something that is ultra fit and that's a whole different, that's a whole different conversation. You need to have a group of people that assist you in making sure that happens. You need help to make sure that your body doesn't go down, because you can have a number of health conditions, starting from rhabdomyolysis to kidney failure to injuries all over your body, and you have to make sure that you're ready for it. People just think, oh, I'm in good shape, I feel good, and they jump on it. You wouldn't believe how many people come to our emergency rooms because of those injuries.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to one other point that we made, is the business of fear. Fear is a huge factor. I tell my kids, imagine not failing and what you could accomplish if you didn't fail. And this is what you touched on, is that instead of saying, I'm afraid that when I come out and speak that I'll say something stupid, imagine you'll say something smart. Imagine that when you come out that you'll actually look good, or that somebody doesn't care if you look fat or thin. It's the business of fear. Fear has been ingrained in our humanity because that's what's kept us alive. I like her. Can I take her back home?
Take her with you.
Oh, yeah. This is what it's all about.
So don't go away, because when we come back, the discussion continues with our panel and Dr. Nandi.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you say, well, you should live a life of balance. You should live a life where you find what works for you. That seems like it's easier said than done. We have a panel discussion with 3 experts here, and we ask you questions, and at the end of the day you say diet is not good, it's a lifestyle that you need to find the balance. But the truth is, how do you, it almost sounds like I'm at a loss for words here, but does balance actually exist nowadays? Is it a balance for me being completely different?
We have to have a purpose, though.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing. We're walking around aimlessly. We're in Johannesburg traffic, driving to nowhere. And if you do that, nothing works. I promise you, if you think that you have no idea where you're going to go, you will definitely go nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. People have no purpose. It's fundamentally, you have to go way back. Our children are not being taught that there's a purpose to what they're doing. They're wandering around aimlessly. And I don't want to pick on the phone, but that's currently the victim of choice. That phone is taking away our communication skills. It's taking away all that we've done in humanity.
Interpersonal skills, yes. Yeah.
Interpersonal skills, movement, diet, everything. It's taken over, and it's not accidental. It's happening. It's being pushed in every direction because people can make money from this device. So what's happening is it's being pushed. So I would take a step back and say, you're saying, well, it's not that easy, Doc. I would say it is that easy. Okay. And here's what we have to do as parents, is that we have to start at a young age and say, this is what I'm doing, what you're doing in your life. You clearly are doing things that are right. And if you have children, and if you don't, when you have them, teach them that at a young age and say, this is what's important. Once you get that, once you know what your destination is, things follow. Otherwise, it will never follow. If you don't have a purpose of why you're doing something, it will never work, right? If you just go to school and you are being forced to, will you do well? Hardly ever. But if you have a goal of why you're going to school, you will study with intent and you'll ace every exam. Most of my students, my patients that are adult students, I wish I knew this when I was a kid, because they're motivated. So I would say, take a step back and find your purpose, and you have to do some soul searching. When it's not working for you, there's a reason. It's because you don't have a fundamental purpose. We have relationships that are caustic. We have lack of any communications, and we've lost our family unit. And that is where it starts. If we don't have that, everything else will fail. And you had a physician talking about that. It's not just about saying a prescription, but we have to look at our society and say, what can I do? It is true. It starts with me. There's all these cliches. It starts with me. The famous Michael Jackson song that I adore, it's looking at the man in the mirror and say, You know, listen, if you don't like what you're doing and you look at the mirror and then ignoring that and saying, I don't know what to do, I mean, it just doesn't work. You know, I was talking to one of the directors from Home Channel. He said, you know, there's these people in America that 300 pounds, yet they go to a restaurant and have a portion that's made for 4 people. Well, you can't tell me you don't know what to do. You just can't tell me that. That doesn't wash. I'm sorry. You know, what is it when you hold up that red card, right?
Yeah.
Your red card, you're out of here because it doesn't follow. You can't tell me that you are 200 pounds overweight, then you want to have a Big Mac. Yeah. Come on. And you tell me that you can't do it. Of course you can. You know the problem. So just say to yourself, what do I want to do? Do I want to live long enough to see my kids graduate from varsity? Yeah, if that's a goal, then stop eating it. But it starts with the why. And I don't mean to sound harsh. It's that we have to go back beyond the diets and what plan Dr. X or Dr. Y or Dr. Nandi is saying. You have to go back to yourself and say, what makes me tick? So.
I think that deserves another round of applause. I think it's also the reason why it's a fundamental flaw in our education system, because we stigmatize mistakes. We're scared from a young age to get things wrong, and yet that's how we learn in life, right? I know that you had a question earlier on, so I want to give you an opportunity to ask it now.
You mentioned organic milk, and that sparked the idea. I'm always drinking long life, what is it?
Long life milk, pasteurized milk, yeah.
Milk. Is that bad or is it okay?
What kind of milk is that, by the way?
Well,
it's pasteurized milk.
Yeah.
But it's not.
But it's shelf. Yeah, it has a longer shelf life.
That's fine, but it's not organic, is it?
No,
it's not.
Yeah, you know, listen. I think that it's okay to take that. I think it's okay if you can afford it. If you can't afford organic milk, I think it's okay. There are a lot of people that
choice
feel.
Would one drink fresh milk over that?
I actually believe that pasteurized milk. I actually believe that I would prefer that over non-pasteurized milk, because for generations there's a reason why it's named after Louis Pasteur, because we used to die of certain diseases before we did that. So I would prefer pasteurized milk, but I'll tell you, there's no evidence to show either way. As far as organic versus non-organic, I think to me it's important, because I think I want to give my children the best shot that they can have. It may be too late for me, because I've been drinking all kinds of stuff for a long time. And I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek here, I'm being facetious. But I think for them at a young age, their immune system, their brain is really functioning and expanding rapidly. So I want to give them all the tools I can. But if somebody can't afford it, I say, please give them milk. I am a huge proponent of milk. I think it's one of the best absorbable source of protein out there. And I think it's great that we can drink milk. I don't think everybody's going to explode if they drink milk like it's being advocated. I don't like almond milk. I think almond milk is like no milk. You shouldn't even call it milk. There's no protein in the darn thing. I mean, look at almond milk. It's 1 gram of protein. I mean, it's nothing versus 9 grams. How can they call it milk?
Nikki, do you agree with this?
Yes, no. I want to know how much you're drinking. I want to know, are you experiencing any weird symptoms? Then you're fine.
I just question whether it's
good or bad.
To be using. Has it got any value whatsoever? This is the first question.
Yeah, it's got a protein value. That's about it. I wouldn't say it's a superfood by any stretch of the imagination.
But what's better?
Organic.
Fresh milk?
Even your organic milk is a pasteurized milk. But
it's pasteurized.
The difference is a cow that eats organic grass and doesn't have hormones injected into it and growth hormones and isn't subject to so much chemical. That's what you're going to find in your organic milk. So your chemical component is going to be that much lower. So from a that's
organic versus non. It's not pasteurized versus non-pasteurized.
Yeah.
Pasteurized is a process. It's different. But organic versus non-organic. Pick organic if you can. But if you can't, I still think milk is a great source of nutrients. I think that, and we are starting to poo-poo that. But I give it to my kids, and I think it's very healthy to do it.
So we're saying organic first. Second, if she had to choose between the long life and fresh milk, you choose the fresh milk.
Pasteurized.
Pasteurized milk,
yes.
And then long life.
But there's no evidence to show this. There's no evidence to back up what I'm saying. It's just that I believe pasteurized is better. But there's no evidence to say that milk she's drinking is actually harmful in any way.
Is milk not one of these trigger foods, though, that we should be avoiding?
For not everybody. And that's the thing. It's being generalized. That the whole population is going to explode because they drink milk. And at least in our country, it's like, oh, milk. Doctor, I'm sure I'm lactose intolerant. I say, well, what evidence is there? They have none. Yeah. Because they've read some brochure.
It's a buzzword.
There's a whole industry trying to have people have lactose free and almond this and coconut fat, and I think it's okay, but you shouldn't call it milk. You know, it's not the same thing.
We'll be right back with Dr. Nandi after this.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
I have another milk question, actually.
Okay. Another milk question.
Sorry, because I was always told that, no, you're probably lactose intolerant because you've got sinus problems, and it turned out that it was actually from gluten. But the whole thing with milk is that everybody's kind of like going organic, this, that, and the other. As far as I'm concerned, anything that actually grows is organic, so we should be saying rather natural. But the milk thing is not so much of whether you're going for the UHT long life or pasteurized, it's about the homogenization. And trying to stay away from homogenized milk is, I believe, what people should be doing, because when it gets homogenized, all the fat cells are broken down, which makes it easier for the fat to get into your system and mess up your arteries. Would you agree with that?
I would, but here's the thing. I actually believe fat's not always bad. I think that you need some fat in your diet. And I think that obviously milk doesn't have all the good fat in it, but I think that fat is a bad word for most people. They think if they have fat, they're going to have something bad's going to happen immediately.
Carbs is,
and the
that's
problem
another
is
bad
that,
word, right?
the problem is sugar and fat. Oh, doc, don't give me no sugar, don't give me no fat, man. You know, that's all I need. But you need 25% of your body to have fat, because it's a building block of your body. No fat, no cells. So that's the other part that I think is a misnomer. We need to let people know they can't drink a gallon at a time. I mean, I see teenagers in America, they drink it, no glass needed.
Wow.
I mean, one of my partners, his son, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
They're drinking 4 gallons of milk. So again, it's moderation, and it's not about any absolute statements. I think that, but if you look at volume concentration, you'll have very few foods that give the same nutrient concentration in that volume. It's hard to find it. Where are you going to find the amount of protein, the amount of fat, the amount of carbs in a container? It's difficult. That's not manufactured by somebody. So I mean, obviously people will disagree, but I think it's an alternative. As long as you don't have sensitivity to it or an allergic reaction, I think it's okay.
I'm going to take one final question before we close. Yes, love.
Thank you.
It's a different question. It's regarding spices.
I like it. Oh yes, I like my spices.
All the spices are good for our health or not? Because I experienced that when we have functions, most old people will say, I don't want food with a lot of spices. And when I grew up years back, our parents would grow their own vegetables. When they cook it, they will only cook it with salt, meat, everything, no spice, no nothing. And they never had diseases like diabetes, cancer, and all that. So since we started eating spices and spicy food, we started experiencing all those diseases.
So you're referring to condiments, or is it the type of
spices or whatever?
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
First of all, I would not use a bunch of salt. I do think that harms your body. A bunch of salt, especially for people who are hypertensive like myself, is not great. So, limit your salt for sure. That is definitely, there's no bias about that or conjecture. You have to avoid, not avoid it completely, but limit it so you're not pouring it on.
And would you recommend, sorry to break you there, Dr. Nandi, Himalayan salt versus
I don't try to make it difficult. I just think iodized salt, that's it. I think iodized salt is okay. I would not have a ton of it. You've seen people, they just pour it on like there's nothing else. Yeah, and you can actually adjust your food accordingly. So, you can make your taste buds better. But the question about spices, it's not all or none. It clearly is helpful. So I'll give you some examples. Turmeric is clearly to be one of the super spices, right? It doesn't change the taste of your food, which is great. Just changes the color. Cumin, on the other hand, will change the taste of your food. So an acquired taste for those of you who don't use it. But both of those are incredible autoimmune system repairers, rather. And it helps you with inflammation, helps control sugar, glucose metabolism. It helps with a variety of diseases. Exactly. So cinnamon also can help you with hypertension. That's actually been shown in studies. But the idea is that spices can be a part, not the whole thing. What I don't want to talk about too much is that we used to use spices and we didn't have any of these problems. I think it's a multiple factors that cause those problems. Spices will help to heal them and try to repair it, but alone, it has to be part of a diet and lifestyle. But you're absolutely right. I would encourage using spices as long as you can tolerate it, even for older folks. It doesn't matter. You just have to do it slowly over time. We give it to our children. We use turmeric and cumin in almost anything that we can, and absolutely cinnamon, and we use honey instead of sugar if we can. So I mean, these are tried and true things that have been there for a lifetime. Garlic also, garlic used to be a superfood for centuries. People, I mean, the amount of nutrient content with no calories at all in this little tiny thing is unbelievable. So please go spice it up as much as possible. But I want to warn you, it's not the whole thing. We have to do more. There's so much more that's going on in South Africa and outside that's causing us to have this problem. The number one thing is no movement whatsoever and eating crap.
And the quality of our food, the quality of the raw ingredients.
Exactly. You can put spice on crap. It's still crap.
Yeah.
Right?
Nicole,
people have this, so.
Sorry, Dr. Nandi.
No problem.
We're running short on time. I'm going to give you the final question. It comes from Dalen, and he says, I've recently come off caffeine and coffee. I miss the kick, but I know that too much is not good for me. What natural alternatives are there, and will they give me that kick?
Green tea has caffeine in it. It so depends. So many people, chocolate, yes, but it's not really. Well, yes, raw cacao is absolutely a natural alternative. Absolutely. I think it depends. A lot of people miss coffee because they like the taste of coffee. A lot of people drink it for the stimulant effect. Other people drink it just because they really like the taste. If it's the caffeine that you're missing, raw cacao, like we said, green tea. But really, once it's worked its way out of your system, you'll be fine.
Some revolutionary sleep.
Gosh,
sleep. Please sleep.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up. Although my eye has just caught one final question, which I'm going to give to you guys, because I actually think it's a good question, and she's posted it more than once. It's from Julieta Suarez Gonzalez, and she said, life after gallbladder removal. I've had mine removed 16 years ago and battle every day with diet and nutrient absorption. And it's a question that I've heard other people ask as well. What can she do?
So the gallbladder is responsible for something like fat absorption mainly, right? So what happens is that because you don't have a storage mechanism, the bile just shoots through. So a lot of people have problems with diarrhea because what's happening is that the bile salts that are secreted, it stimulates the intestinal system. So the bile shoots through. Normally, there's a little bag that collects it, and then your body's nervous system says it's time to release it when there's fat and needs digestion. It squeezes it through. You don't have that, so it's constantly coming through. And some people, that's a massive problem. So there's many things you can do. You can obviously avoid fat in your diet as much as possible. But secondly, there's medicines that absorb that. One that's called cholestyramine that you can use that absorb the bile salts, and that almost in the majority of patients, take care of it. Okay. Take care of that because you still have the digestive enzymes and the digestive material that the bile salts contain. However, you just have too much and it's not regulated. It's going all the time.
Okay. Nikki, any final closing thoughts from you regarding that question?
Yeah, when you're looking at gallbladder, your food choices are so limited and digestion is impeded, and it's not very often when you've got a problem, we've had a gallbladder taken out, there's other issues as well. Very often low digestive enzymes or low stomach acid. So you've got to be very careful about green vegetables. Very often people with no gallbladder find it very difficult to eat green vegetables. That doesn't mean don't eat them. It means there's another way around that you can still get them in, whether it's smoothies or juicing. So you can still get that nutrition down. In fact, just even going back to the antioxidant question that just came up for me again was, when something's working for you when you feel it working. So if you have a smoothie with organic vegetables, or not even organic, but you'll feel a difference so fast. It's almost like something switches on in your body, and you don't get that from a pill. There's always a way to get the nutrition into the body. Okay. Not just the traditional ways.
But I will say, though, one thing I will say is that the reason why green vegetables are a problem is because it stimulates the intestinal system. So the vegetables we use to get bowel movements because it stimulates the intestinal system. When it stimulates the intestinal system, you have bile there. That's what causes the lack of digestion. If you can absorb the bile salts, you can eat those green vegetables. So the doctors have to give them that solution to absorb the bile salt, this medicine cholestyramine. Then you should be able to eat the vegetables. It's the reason why is because of the stimulation of the intestinal tract. And that's what results in the quote-unquote digestion. It's not really digestion, but the abnormal movement of your intestinal tract that makes somebody feel like they're not absorbing anything.
So the poor motility.
That's exactly it. That the bile salts, if you put bile salts in an intestinal muscle, it starts moving.
Yeah, okay.
It's an irritant.
I wish we had more time. There's really so many other questions that have come through. I know you guys would love to ask some more questions as well, but unfortunately we do have to wrap it up. So let's give our panel another round of applause. And Dr. Nandi, so amazing having you in South Africa.
Oh, it's my
so
pleasure.
amazing having you come and share your knowledge, your insight, your experience with us as well. Please plan another trip very
Absolutely, I
soon
will.
because
Thank
we
you.
have so much more to draw from you. Ladies, thanks again for joining us as well. And thank you to all of you for coming through. You deserve a round of applause. And I end each episode with a health mantra, so we're going to end it off today as well. And it's basically you're healthy, vibrant, and lean. Love and take care of your being. That's it.
Cool.
Namaste.
I'm feeling better now. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. Ba-ba-da.